Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the Former Action Guys podcast. I'm your host, Justin Cramer. All right. Who am I and why am I doing this podcast? Well, like I said, my name is Justin Cramer. I got out of the Marine Corps in 2018. I was a JTAC evaluator. I got out as a staff sergeant and decided, I had done 12 years, and I was like, you know what? I'm ready to go do something else, especially because I did 2 MUs at the end of my career, and I was like, that was enough for me, and decided to move along. That's why I decided to get out, and now I'm a full-time student at San Diego State University at the time of this recording, and I am studying journalism and advertising. So, I figured, why not put my skills to use and interview people that I've met throughout my career. I've been, fortunate enough to meet a ton of great people. Being in the JTAC community and being in the fire support community, you get hands-on with, infantry guys, your air wing guys, just a whole gamut, your artillery guys, obviously, just a whole gamut of people. And, I have so many people that I know that have stories, that have done deployments or, done crazy things that no one really knows about it unless they were there or unless you know them. And some of the stuff is heroic. Some of the stuff is just like wild stuff done, in libo ports and stuff like that. I just felt like I wanted to get the guys' stories out there, guys and gals. That's why I decided to do this podcast. I'm not going to go into detail about my own background. I'll give you a quick synopsis, but it kind of comes out over the podcast. Like I said, this is, when I'm recording this, we're at episode 29. So, you'll learn about me. A quick synopsis about me, though. I went to boot camp in 2006. I went to Parris Island, graduated from there. I came in open contract. I wanted to do infantry, came in open contract like a fucking idiot, and I got sent to Camp Johnson and made into a 3521, which is a motor team mechanic. Okay, so I spent a couple years at 2nd Maintenance Battalion. I did a deployment to Iraq with them. And then while I was in Iraq, I decided to lat move or change jobs. So I switched jobs from being a mechanic to being a fire support man, or a lot of people, you just say forward observer, 0861 or 0861. We're all of those things. So from 2nd Maintenance Battalion, I went to 10th Marines. I was there from 2009 to 2014. Most of that time was spent with 210. And while I was there, I, learned my job, became a fire support man, and did a deployment to Afghanistan with 3-6 as the fire support chief in 2011. Came home from that deployment, got selected to go to TACP school, and became a JTAC. So, and all these acronyms that I'm throwing at you, there's a glossary in the show notes, so you can check that out, and that should all be in there. So let me back it up a little bit. JTAC, Joint Terminal Attack Controller. So I called in aircraft, airstrikes, and stuff like that. So I got selected to go to that school. I went, graduated, got done, and during that time frame, things were, the tempo was kind of high. So turned right around and went out the door, back to Afghanistan, went to Sangin, and was an Afghan Army advisor. So we lived with, we worked with, every day we patrolled with and stuff like that, our Afghan counterparts. So I did that. Interesting deployment. We talk about it quite a bit, more so in episode 2. But Cam and I get into, some of our Afghan stuff in episode 1 as well. So come back from that one, immediately get orders to 1st Anglico, and then I PCS, drive cross country, hit up 1st Anglico, roll right into another deployment because they're starting their work up. So I get attached to the 11th MU, do a deployment with them, and come back. And thinking I'm going somewhere else, I end up getting orders to the MU as the fires chief. They were hurting for a fires chief, so I got fucking hot filled, sent over there. And so I became the 11th MU fires chief. I did another MU, which is Marine Expeditionary Unit, which is a deployment on ship. And it's, if you've ever done one, it's like a floating prison. You can eat chow and work out, and unless you get off ship, that's about all you got. You can watch people with their boat girlfriends and stuff in the chow hall and stuff like that. There's not a lot going on ship. So came back, like I said, got out, went to SDSU, and here we are. So that's a little bit about me. I'm glad you're checking out the show. I hope you spread the word and tell your friends. Hit up my website, jkramergraphics.com, and you can check me out on Instagram under jkramergraphics. And so welcome to Former Action Guys podcast. All right, everyone, welcome to the podcast today. I'm talking to my good friend Camino Amil. He was my corpsman when I worked with the Afghan advisor team in Sangin. We were with the 215 brigade or unit, whatever, ANA unit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I brought Camino here on the show today. I'm just going to call you Cam. It's weird calling you Camino. It's so weird.
Yeah, it's Cam's a lot easier.
Yeah, he did a couple deployments as a corpsman, all to the lovely Sangin Valley. So we'll get into that and some more information. So if you want, man, just go ahead and start off by telling us your name and everything and where you're from, what you're all about.
Awesome, dude. Yeah, so like Justin said, or I'm going to call him Cramer because I'm not used to the whole Justin thing either. But so like Cramer said, I was his corpsman on my third deployment to the Sangin Valley. So we were on the same advisor training teams, which they had like 3 different acronyms for that at some point or another while we were there. It was like ATT. It was like we had advisor training group. And then at some point it was like advisor training cells.
Well, it was ATC. We were ATC when we were at Camp Lejeune.
Yeah.
And then
the school we went to was ATG.
ATG, right? That was the advisor training group. Gold certified. Remember that?
Yeah.
You're now gold certified advisors. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Whatever that meant. Yeah, so okay. So
when did you join the military and why did you join?
Came in 2009. Honestly, I think my biggest reason for joining was just kind of like to get out of my hometown. I wanted to quote unquote do the whole like not military thing, but like get out of my hometown, see the world. Kind of the Navy sold that to me pretty well.
Where are you from originally?
I was born in the Philippines actually. So I was born on Cebu, which is a island in the Philippines, and I left when I was like 5, so I can't really say I'm full Filipino, but I am of Filipino descent.
I don't think I knew that you were born in the Philippines, actually.
Yeah, dude, I don't sound like it at all, or or act like it. I mean, I have the goddamn American flag tattooed on my forearm, so there's that too. But yeah, I mean, I moved out here to San Francisco when I was like 6 or 7, so adapted pretty quickly to the whole like American lifestyle. Went to high school in Marin County, which is a pretty well-off county moving forward. Did that, and then shortly after high school, I think it was like a year, I signed up, maybe I want to say like 6 or 7 months for the Navy after I graduated high school. But with the way things worked out, I was in the DEP program for 10 months. So I just hung around for 10 months and just...
Did you have to come to like the weekly meetings and do the PT? Does the Navy do that? I know the Marines, they mess with their poolies the whole time.
They do, but I was able to be like local. Like I live pretty far away. There's no like recruiting station in like where I live in like Marin County. Like, so it's all like in Santa Rosa, which is like 45 minutes away from where I live. So I was able to be like, look, I work, I got other stuff to do. So I would go to a meeting like maybe twice a month.
Yeah, I don't think they can actually force you to come.
No, that's the thing. They can't. It's not like you have to be here or we rescind your contract type of thing.
What kind of recruiter you think would actually be like, you know what? I'm not sending you to boot camp now.
Well,
like their command would be like, go screw yourself. He's going. I don't care if he came or not.
Dude, I mean, I think they were just trying to, what's it called? Obviously, I think part of it was like the idea of like keeping the kids like motivated, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Did you have any family in the military before? I know the Filipino like
mafia.
Not the Filipino, the Filipino mafia, yeah. But that heritage, like, there's a lot of military service in with Filipinos.
Primarily the Navy.
Primarily in the Navy, for sure.
They have it's like what is it? It's almost like a franchise for them. Or no, the Navy has a franchise on Filipinos. Yeah,
maybe. I mean, they run it, man.
At least the Navy, dude. I mean,
there's definitely a Filipino mafia on ship, and I can two deployments on ship. I can tell you 100% that is true.
Yeah.
So, but did you have any family that were in the military?
No, no immediate family. I had an uncle through marriage who was he retired as a colonel.
Okay.
In the Army, but he retired fucking when I was like 8 or something like that. So he had been out many years by the time I had joined the military.
Were your parents surprised that you decided to join the Navy?
No, I was kind of a shithead growing up. I'm sure I was probably one of the roughest to raise growing up. So I think they were pretty relieved. They were like, "Get the fuck out."
And what made you decide to become a corpsman, or was that your original choice?
So in all honesty, it wasn't like a definitive thing. I wasn't like I want to be a corpsman. So you go to DEP or what's it called? You talk to a recruiter or whatever, and then you don't actually pick a job until you go to MEPS. So after you take the ASVAB, and then the next day they tell you like your scores or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't know. I had an idea of what I wanted to be, but then I took my ASVAB, and then they gave me a list of jobs that I could have taken. I honestly don't remember what my ASVAB score was, but I got done with it, and they were like, "You have like these options." And I remember the options were like, I think it was like crypto, IT, and hospital corpsman were the ones I was looking at. The ones that really caught my eye, type of thing. The IT, what I think is like information specialist or IS or IT, something was like information specialist, and I was like computer systems, and then like translating like raw data is what I saw on the sheet they had printed me, and I was like, that sounds sick. Like that sounds like something I could be doing. And then I remember looking at the hospital corpsman page, it was like all medical skills or whatever. And then so this is what sold me on being a corpsman was at the bottom of the list, I was I was a young, dumb fucking kid. So at the bottom of the list, it was like, I looked at IT and it was like, like translating raw data. And I remember like fucking picturing like me hammering away at like a fucking keyboard. And then for the corpsman, it was like, they forward deploy. And then part of it was like they forward deploy and set up like, like shock trauma platoons and all this. But the one that caught my eye was like they forward deploy and they deploy as what's it called? Battlefield medical specialist with Fleet Marine Force. And I was like, that sounds sick. And so like I was just like, yeah, I'll pick it. Honestly, I had no idea what I was doing until that time. So I looked out picking it and then like really falling in love with that job as I progressed forward.
Why didn't you, if you wanted to work with the Marines, why didn't you just join the Marines from the get-go? Or did you go to the Navy first? Was that your only recruiter?
There were two options. Initially, actually, when I first went to there's a recruiting substation. I think that's what they call it. It's like a smaller, it's not like the main hub. It's like a bunch of offices that they go to or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's like a small recruiting substation in like Novato, California, which is like a little bit north of where I used to live. So I went there initially to talk to the Army. And when I went there, the Army wasn't in and the Air Force wasn't in. So the only two people that were in were the Marine Corps. So I talked to first a Marine Corps recruiter, and then I talked to the Navy afterwards. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So for me, like looking back at like my career, because I didn't do like the Navy thing. I didn't spend time I didn't do like the hospital Navy thing. Like I didn't spend time in a clinic, didn't spend time at a hospital. Didn't do blue side at all in my 5 years. So I stayed green side the entire time. I probably should have been an 03 just because like, you remember me, like I like the medical stuff, but I really like most of like the shooting.
I think you called more people Pogue than any grunt I've ever met.
I was pretty disgruntled, dude. I was
spending your entire time with the infantry will do that too.
God, dude, I was insane. Jesus Christ.
How was so most of the people listening to this is probably at least initially are probably Marines or people that aren't associated with the military. How would you describe Navy boot camp? Was it what you thought? And
dude, so like I grew up, my dad growing up was kind of like, he was actually kind of like a tiger dad. So like, like helicopter parenting type of shit where he was like all about like discipline, clean your room type of shit. So when I got to boot camp, it was like being yelled. It was like having my dad there, but fucking, but it was like a stranger. Right. And
are you my dad?
Yeah. So I was just like, yo, like honestly, like this is difficult being away from home, but like it wasn't the worst part of boot camp. And I think most people can say that for anything. I honestly have no idea what the Air Force is like as far as boot camp, but what's it called? The worst part of boot camp was processing. Like getting into boot camp was the worst part.
Really?
Because it was like, dude, it was just like we were shuffling around in fucking sweats, like trying to figure out what the fuck was going on. We were just waiting, doing medical, signing a bunch of shit, and
getting
no
all
one
the
was
shots.
Yeah, exactly. Like no one was training, and then like those days don't count towards like actually graduating. So you're just like, dude, like the longer we stay here, like the fucking, the longer we'll fucking be here. So that was like probably the toughest part because we weren't actually training. But once like things got into motion or whatever, it was like the days like blended in. Like I honestly don't really remember much about boot camp.
Oh, okay. All right. So when did you graduate from boot camp, and then what did you do after that?
I graduated so at the time. So I was one of the last classes to make it through old core school at Great Lakes. Before they moved, they consolidated all training for initial medical training for most of this. I think actually all of the services, and they moved it to San Antonio.
Okay, yeah.
So they got that big program down there now. So I was one of the last. We were one of the last classes to make it through the old core school in Great Lakes. So I went to boot camp across the street, and then just went to Great Lakes, and I was there for 13 weeks.
That's a shitty area. For anybody that's never been to Chicago, Great Lakes is like a sketchy spot to get off the train.
Dude, it is. It's a sketchy spot. I was there during the winter, so it was cold as fuck, dude.
Texas would have been way better. I think Texas would have been a lot better.
I don't know much about Texas, but from what I understand, the kids the kids who go to like school at San Antonio, and maybe, or the what's it called? The guys I served with who went to San Antonio to work at this schoolhouse, say that the conditions for the students there are a little bit not worse, but it wasn't like the conditions we had at core school. Because at core school, like I felt like, they kind of treated us like kind of like kids. Like you had like levels of like liberty when it came to you had to like pass a certain test and not fucking obviously get in trouble type of shit. But for the most part, like I felt like we were kind of treated like adults. Like you went to school till like 4. You went to school till 4, and then you had like your duties or whatever. But for the most part, they kind of left you alone. I think in San Antonio, because there were so many like the higher ups are all there, but they're all there from every single branch type of thing.
Yeah, so if you make a mistake, you're making a mistake in front of like the everybody.
Entire, yeah. So if one Navy dude looks bad, like fucking every Navy dude looks bad.
Yeah, everyone's like, "Well, look at those Navy dudes fucking up again." So you went to core school. That's 13 weeks. When you got done with core school, how did you feel like confidence wise in your capabilities as a medic? And then is there another school follow on after that?
Yeah. So what happened in core school is you get to pick depending on your grades, you get to pick your first duty station basically. So that was the thing. I'm not sure if that's a thing now, but at the time, like depending on your grades, like that's what you could do. You could pick like a hospital, or so you got to pick your first duty station depending on the available like billets basically.
Okay.
So for a lot of us going in, so it's like one of those things where like the war was still kicking off, like we were still going through like Afghanistan and whatever, so they had a lot of infantry billets. But it was like one of those things where like when we were in core school, like a lot of, especially like the dudes, like a lot of the dudes were like, I'm gonna go division, which was like this, like division was like the infantry, right? Or like the infantry already tanks, which I didn't know at the time. I thought division was just the infantry.
The infantry.
Yeah. So what's it called?
Fighting happens.
Most of the people, most of the dudes were like, I'm gonna go infantry, or like I want to go to division, like kind of like be like hard asses type of shit. But the thing is like once we got to pick orders and we left our units, most of those dudes didn't pick the infantry. Most of them went to like clinics, hospitals. They went to like fucking air wing or something. And the dudes who picked division, they had 2 orders at the time, like at least for my class, they had 2 orders to go to 1st Marine Division, none to 3rd. And then they had a shit ton of billets open for 2nd Marine Division. But everyone was like, oh, I don't want to go to 2nd Marine Division because it's in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And then like, but the dudes who went to the 2nd Marine Division were the actual like, all ended up either going to 2-8 or like any of like these victor units that actually fucking fought in Afghanistan. So
yeah,
like,
so they got what they asked for.
They did, dude. They did. And like the dudes who went to, I think one of the kids who went to 1st Marine Division kind of got fucked on his orders because he got there and it just wasn't, it was like basically kind of like a runaround, but it wasn't what he was looking for. The dudes who went to 2nd Marine Division and actually went to the infantry fucking, they fought the war. So
now when you're saying that they all wanted to go to division, you get sent to, let's say you're going to 2nd Marine Division, but you don't just go right to 2A.
No,
you go to
that field med.
Field med, yeah, that's right.
So FMTB, which is Field Medical Training Battalion, and they've got one on the East Coast, which is all the females will go to the East Coast because it's what's it called? What do they call it? it's fucking
co-ed.
Yes, co-ed. I was gonna be like, what is that? Yeah, so it's like co-ed.
It's inclusive,
right?
all inclusive,
all inclusive. Yes. So it's co-ed. So they've got what's it called? So it'll be co-ed, but the West Coast is all male. I'm not sure if that's changed now.
I think that might have. I'm not 100% sure. I know a female corpsman that was there as an instructor.
So they'll have female instructors, but I'm not sure if the West Coast is. I mean, maybe it is now.
I don't know why they wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, especially because like it would make sense because I think in the long run it would be cheaper for the Navy to have both.
How long was FMTB, and what did you? Do you think boot camp and stuff, all that stuff, properly prepared you for FMTB? And how were your instructors, and were any of them Marines that had actual combat experience?
Okay, so that was one of the cool things about FMTB is a lot of, especially like around the time that we went, and then obviously like the classes that came before us. So the way that the instructors work were most of them had come from division, if not had combat experience, but you had like what's it called? Like a duality to FMTB. And specifically the duality was that you had most of the time you had an 0369, so like a prior grunt or platoon sergeant. And they would be one of your instructors and they would teach the what's it called? They would teach like the Marine Corps immersion part, which would be like tactics, training, and procedures, like your standard SOPs and stuff like that. But
and customs and courtesies.
Exactly, customs and courtesies was probably like the big thing. And then obviously there was like the TCCC factor, the tactical combat casualty care is like this the big thing that they teach you at FMTB. Other than the medical part, the Marine Corps part of it would be more like MCT, I would say, like Marine Combat Training, rather than like an actual like SOI or infantry billet, because we weren't doing like squad attacks or platoon attacks or anything like that. Most of the weapons training we did was within just standard like M4, like we went to the rifle range.
Did you shoot like the normal table of fire?
Yes.
Like the 2, 3, and 500
Exactly.
yards?
That was we shot the normal tables and that was pretty much it.
Did you shoot anything other than the M4?
Not that I remember. I'm pretty sure we only shot the M4.
You guys didn't pistol qual?
No, you can qual. We call them boot camp for the M9, but that was fucking garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So once you finish up at FMTB, when you get to the end of that, did you know you were going to division before you went to FMTB?
No.
Or did you,
so
when
that
you were
was
at FMTB. That's when.
Though they pick orders. So I don't entirely know how they choose which unit you go to as far as like division or whatever. Whether or not your grades have what's it called? Whether or not your grades have an impact on that, or like whether or not like your instructors have an impact on that. But most of the guys who picked division orders coming into FMTB went to infantry like Victor units. Obviously the ones who didn't and who were just slotted to go to school went to like Air Wing or something, or went to all the other or went to like the respective like clinics. But most of the guys who picked division orders went to the infantry. Now, that was like one of the things that we were kind of freaking out about when we got to FMTB, was that one of the portions of learning were like understanding like Marine Corps structure, as far as like what a regiment is, what the different like what MLG is, things like that. Once we figured out like division encompassed more than just the infantry, we were like, wait a minute, we can get sent to Arty? Or like we were like, what the fuck is LAR? And I was like, dude, like I only wanted to go to the infantry. Like, dude, this is insane. So
but
like,
I thought LAR is the infantry.
Well, yeah. So that was the thing, is that like, so we got down to that and we were like not halfway through, because that was like one of the first things we studied was like structure of the Marine Corps. But I remember like looking at it and like learning what division was, and I was like, yo, if I don't go to an infantry unit, this is gonna suck.
Like, I'm gonna be so pissed.
Yeah, but I mean, I liked that. We ended up going to 2A, and then obviously like we went to 2A and then deployed.
So when did you check into 2A?
I think I checked into 2A, I want to say July of 2010.
How did you, like, when you were going to check in, first you didn't opt to do the Marine Corps standards, right?
No.
So you kept your Navy uniforms. You didn't do the Marine uniforms.
No. I mean, for the Marine uniforms, like the only thing we would wear is the chucks.
Actually, if you want to explain the difference, because I know some guys can do it, and it threw me off the first time I went to BAS when I was at Lejeune one time, and there was a guy standing there with alphas on, but he had all the Navy stuff on it, and I'm like, what the hell? And that's the first time I'd ever seen anybody that had the Marine issue. So if you want to explain the difference.
They've got, you can, when you get to, I don't even think it's just a division. I think if you get to like a Greenside unit, specifically, like, obviously like the Marine Corps, you can opt to go Marine Corps standards, and so you would run their PFT, and then I think you could do their boards if you wanted to, so I'm not entirely sure how that worked, but I know at least you run their, what's it called? You would fit their standards, so you'd have to get like, you wouldn't be able to do like the whole like Navy thing, which would be like get fucking long ass wavy hair.
Oh, really?
Which, so I honestly, I think if you look at the actual order, it doesn't matter if you're fucking Navy regs or Marine Corps regs. If you're attached to a Marine Corps unit, you have to be within Marine Corps regs.
Yeah, but nobody does.
Nobody does that though. So like I think that's like kind of just like a weird like miscommunication as far as the.
Why would a corpsman opt to go with Marine standards over the Navy?
Honestly, there's.
Is it good for promotions?
No,
or?
I'm pretty damn sure there's no actual, what's it called? You don't get like a nod towards promotion. You don't get extra points or anything like that. It's just, for a lot of people, it's kind of like I think it's a pride thing, but there's no like actual, I don't think there's
no real benefits to doing it.
No.
You just have tighter standards.
Yeah. And you get like an extra set of uniforms. I mean, you get to wear the chucks.
Yeah.
Which honestly look pretty sick. Especially because you still wear your rank on your sleeve type of stuff. So
yeah, that's why it was. Yeah, it's just different. Very rarely did I see someone. I think I only saw someone maybe 2 or 3 times the entire time I was in.
When we were 2-8, I think there was only one, and there was Judd. Judd was, what's it called? One of the senior line corpsmen for Golf Company. He was just this salty ass fucking dude.
So when you showed up. Now you got your wish. You're going to the infantry. As a corpsman. What's going through your head as because these guys. This is, what year was this that you checked in?
This is 2010. So
2010, you're coming off. These are guys that have been going through the Iraq War, and at this time frame, Iraq had kind of dwindled down, and Afghanistan was ramping up.
Afghanistan was ramping up. This was like the height of like Obama's like troop surge in Afghanistan. And then so 2-8 prior to that in 2009 had fucking, they went through fucking Garmshire. They did the big they had a documentary out. Hornet's Nest.
Okay.
That was 2-8 Echo Company, which is the company I went to when I first checked into division, and it was like these dudes fucking did shit, right? And then so I got into 2-8 BAS, and it was like, at least for me, it was like the proverbial like, and I'm sure like most people coming into like a Victor unit, especially like an infantry unit, it would be like, it was like the proverbial like fucking, Hall of Heroes type of shit. So, like checking into an infantry unit, especially after people have done like combat deployments and a few months afterwards, like you would see like Bronze Stars with V's, NAMs with V's, like combat action ribbons, Purple Hearts. So I remember walking in there and I was just like, what the fuck? And I remember specifically because there.
Good.
Oh, my bad. Okay. Yeah. So we had an HM2 par when I first checked in. I remember like he was talking to, for us, it was like he was talking to like his version of like a detailer. For like his next set of orders, and he was like, hey, like I want to go to Spain, right? And his detailer was like, oh, like we don't have what's it called, we don't have like billets open for that or whatever. And I remember Par was like, Par was this salty ass fucking corpsman, and he was like, hey, I just like fucking did my combat deployments. I want to fucking get out of here. I want to go to like Sigonella or whatever. And his detailer was like, let me see what I can do for you.
And he'd been blown up too, huh?
Yeah, dude. He had what's it called? I mean, to say that he had a rough deployment was to put it lightly. Like, I mean, him and a lot of the other corpsmen that I looked up to as far as like, like what I wanted to be going up there. Like, Par was up there. So was like most of my senior line, and then all of the senior corpsmen at Echo Company as well were dudes I for sure looked up to, if not wanted to be.
Yeah. No, that's good, man. I feel like right now, as I was getting out of the military, you start seeing that units are having no combat experience within the unit. You know what I'm saying? And it's not always a bad thing, but it's not a good thing. It's definitely not like, I think you lose a lot of the institutional knowledge that has been gained by guys that have gone overseas and have actually put rounds down range or been in the fight. Yeah. And they understand like they understand stuff that the book's not going to teach you.
Exactly, yeah.
And then, like you said, you walked in to 2-8 and you're like, holy shit, the Hall of Heroes. Like,
yeah.
Especially if you come in on a day where everybody's wearing Chucks or
Exactly.
Alphas.
I think it was like a Friday. I think we came in, and then so that was the thing. It was just like, and I'm sure like I had that experience, but I can only imagine like most of the other Jews that checked into their units were like in the same like fucking like Jesus Christ, dude.
But now it's kind of unfortunate because, and maybe it doesn't matter because they don't know any better or they won't know, but you don't have these guys coming in like you did that look up and go, oh shit, this dude has done this, and it's not. And I guarantee it wasn't that dude telling you the story about what he did. It was probably someone else. Like,
yeah, no, that's all it was just like, you know, like their, what's it called? Like the guys they served with were like, oh, like fucking Doc Crooney's a badass because of this.
Yeah.
Or like Old Man McCormick was a badass because of this type of shit. Like it for sure wasn't like, oh, hey, you know, how's it going? My name is HM3 Crooney. I'm your new corpsman. This is why I'm a badass. It was like, Crooney was super cool, right? He was my senior corpsman coming into 2-8 Echo Company. He was super chill, fucking relaxed. And then I remember like fucking like, you know, Lance Corporal Webster, fucking some of the older guys would, you know, talk to us about Crooney or like Wickham or like all these fucking corpsmen at 2-8. And I was just like, dude, like, could I be like these dudes?
Yeah.
You know?
So after you checked in, like, what was it like? So you got there, you got to the unit, you got your, you know, you went to SIF, you got all your gear, did that bullshit that everyone hates.
After that, it was we got to 2-8 right when they were doing their basically their pre-deployment package for Afghanistan.
Okay, so you rolled right in.
We rolled right in. So we did like squad comp like a couple weeks after that, and then we did.
What before you get into that? Who were you with?
I was with so when I got to 2-8, I was with 2-8 Echo Company 3rd Platoon, and then I jumped between 2nd and 3rd, but I ended up staying with 3rd Squad.
So I only asked this question because it's you usually, like, if you ask someone like who are you with, they'll be like, oh, I was with, you know, so and so. I was with this unit.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when you ask an infantryman, you know, or people that worked with the infantry, it's like, who were you with? They're like, 2-8, 2nd Squad, first, First Platoon, Second Squad. You know, it's like, okay, like, it's very, this is my team.
It is.
And that's super cool. I mean, that's, we obviously never get that in artillery because we're attachments to everybody.
Yeah.
We're the bastard children, so we don't get that. But I've always thought that's super cool that not only do they have pride in the unit, but they have all the way down to like, hey, we're 4th fire team, we're 3rd fire team. You know,
that's always been like the, what's it called? The cool thing I liked about the infantry, because like honestly, like 2-8 Echo Company was pretty close, especially going into that deployment. But every platoon had their own like vibe, basically their own like soul spirit type of shit. And what's it called? Moving forward, then that was pretty sick because wherever anyone went, depending on who they were, like I want to say like 3rd Platoon was probably like, what's it called? What is it? I'm pretty sure fucking every 3rd Platoon has heard the whole like 3rd Platoon type of shit. But,
you got 3rd Platoon, it has to be.
Yeah, right. But I mean, it was like the 3rd Platoon was always like the, what's it called? Not the, I don't want to say 3rd Platoon was like, I think every platoon would be like, we're the salty platoon. But I honestly think 3rd Platoon was a little bit different as far as the vibe. Like we were kind of like the, I don't know how, like, I don't know how to put it.
Every team has their own flavor. You know what I'm saying? Like they're all, there's usually, every team usually has something that they're really good at.
Yeah.
Better than the other, you know, squads or fire teams or whatever. There's usually like one specialty that they can do really well.
Good, yeah.
And sometimes you get, you know, these units or these squads and stuff that have so many capabilities or they're just really good, you know. Did you guys, you said you guys were running the squad competition, like Super Squad or?
Yeah, we were, what's it called? It was Kilgore Squad. So Song Kilgore, or at the, so speaking of fucking insanity, Kilgore was my squad leader in Afghanistan. But at the time I checked into 2-8, which was July of 2010, Kilgore was a Lance Corporal Kilgore, right? And then we went to Afghanistan January of 2011.
Okay.
So obviously that was like meritorious promote, but Lance Corporal Kilgore was my what's it called? Squad leader at the time, and we Kilgore was so shit hot that between July and January he picked up Corporal Meritorious, or picked up he picked up Corporal Meritorious before we left for AP Hill, and then picked up Meritorious Sergeant before we left. I think before we left CAX.
Really?
I want to say, or like after. But Kilgore was shit hot. He just got into some trouble that I'm not gonna.
So
get
I
into.
mean, for meritorious guys, a lot of times they're some. I mean, I don't know your experience, but I've seen guys get meritorious promoted that were like good on paper, but so he was good all around though.
Kilgore
he was like
was
a legit good infantryman and stuff.
Kilgore was good all around. And
He's
he
not
was,
just a guy that has a 300 PFT and
no,
all
no.
his NCIs.
I mean, I'm pretty damn sure Kilgore did have a 300 PFT,
Yeah.
but Kilgore could fucking
But
run.
he had
And,
common sense to go along with.
yeah, he could run and gun with the best of them.
So what was your? So you got to 2-8. You know you're assigned to your platoon. Everything's going, and you're starting your workup. How did the workup go for you?
The workup was quick. It was like we went to Fort AP Hill, did a bunch of training in between that, and then went to obviously like we went to CAX, or I think now it's like Enhanced Mojave Viper or something like that.
Yeah.
For most of the.
I think it's
new
changed
guys.
again.
Oh Jesus
Since
Christ!
I've been out. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So for us, it was CAX, and so we went to CAX for like our what's it called? Your final like big training op. So you did a bunch of like ranges out there, and before that, so like when I first checked into 2-8, it was like before we went to AP Hill. I think I want to say even before we went to before we did the squad comp, we did DMOC or like live tissue training. So I got to do that twice when I was in, and then so I did that once before I left for 2-8, and then once when you and I went.
Yep.
So
Live tissue training is, people hate on it. PETA hates on it. People think it's a bad thing.
It is,
because you're killing an animal.
It is
but
hands down the best training I've ever been in
I'd
for
say
medical.
I will say that when we got to the end, you don't really think about it. You don't really think about what you're doing. You're like, all right, I'm keeping this pig alive. I'm packing the wound.
Yeah.
I'm putting on the tourniquet. Whatever. It's still alive. Cool. And for me, I didn't even really think about it until at the very end. The instructor's like, "Look at this pig. It's missing a leg. It's got a gunshot wound. It's got cuts here, here, and here. All these wounds are fixed, and it's still alive." And that's when I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, okay,
Yeah.
I get it. And knowing that that's like a sentient being,
Yeah.
and like keeping it alive, I was like, it gives you confidence that, okay, if I get shot, if I get cut, like someone can help me,
Exactly.
or I can help myself. And it's like legit. It's almost like when you go to the gas chamber is not to make you better at putting your gas mask on. The gas chamber is designed to make you trust that your gas mask works.
Yeah.
So I think the TCCC, live tissue training shows you like, hey man, the stuff we're teaching you works. And the other thing is that the guys that are teaching it to you, I mean, for us, I don't know about your initial class, but I know for ours, we had like former Navy SEALs.
Yeah, a lot of them were most of them were all like old 18 Deltas basically.
Yeah.
I still remember the name of fucking my first instructor at DMOC, and I remember him because his name was Josh. He wasn't old at all. He was fucking maybe like mid 30s or something, but he was an 18 Delta. I want to say with an ODA, and he's teaching DMOC or whatever, and he's like fucking, we're going over like wound packing, and he's like packing this. He's packing this pig, but he comes in there with like obviously a sharp ass knife. He cuts into the what's it called, one of the limbs, and then just tears like the brachial artery, or like I guess like the pig's version of a brachial artery, and it just pulls into blood, right? So it's just that cavity just fills up, and then meanwhile he's playing music in the background. And he's just like, he's got his sunglasses on, his fucking cap's tilted back, and he just puts his hand in there, stops, and he was like, this is how you, what's it called? You stop a bleed, technically. Like, if you apply pressure, it doesn't always have to be external. Like, if there's a cavity, you're going to put your hand in it, and this is what it's going to look like.
Put your hands in it, get it.
Yeah, dude. And I remember that vividly, obviously, because there was, like, the blood part. But I remember because he put the music on, fucking took his knife out, and just, like, it was, like, super nonchalant. He was just, like, cut this pig up, put his hand in, and he was like, this is what it looks like, this is what it feels like, and he was like, this is what I want you guys to do. So he took his hand out, and then everyone in our in our team was like, putting our hands in there, and I was just like, dude, this is insane.
I think the nonchalantness of it is part of the problem, that people have an issue with it. I think they look at it and they're like, look at these people, how can they just nonchalantly cut into an animal? But they don't realize that the guy doing that, he's not nonchalant because he's an asshole and he doesn't care about the animal. He's nonchalant because he's done it with real human beings in combat, and this is probably the 1,000th pig that he's cut into to teach his fellow medics and military members.
Exactly. And I want to say it's not because he doesn't care. Part of it too was, I think, I guarantee you part of it too was that he wanted to show the level of composure you needed to be able to think through a lot of those things.
Yeah, because I mean, before that, in any of your medical training, had they ever told you to put your hand in the cavity and stop the bleeding?
They talked about it where they were like, and everyone's seen that fucking scene at fucking goddamn Black Hawk Down where they're trying to like clamp the fucking
literally.
femoral,
That's literally the scene I was thinking about when you were describing that. It's literally the scene
where they're trying to like clamp the femoral artery because it's receding. Like everyone's seen that, but it's like, you know, like it's for him it was like, hey, like this is what it's gonna look like. This is what it's gonna feel like. He was like very composed, and he was like, there's steps to this, right? And he was like, you guys got to think through this, move through this. And it's like, don't get stuck on the fact that, you know, like there's a, you know, like the pig has a, you know, a cavity filling up with blood.
Yeah.
It's warm blood. And it's like the first time you've ever seen that much blood anywhere.
Yeah. And so for those that have never done live tissue training or don't really understand what we're talking about, if you haven't seen it on the news and stuff, they either bring out a pig, and I've also seen goats before.
Yeah, I've heard of goats. I've never seen it.
And what they'll do is they'll bring the animals out and they'll sedate them. They have a veterinarian on site that sedates them. So they don't feel anything. They don't, you know, they don't know what's going on. They're just there as patients, and they're referred to as patients the entire time.
They're not referred to as animals at all.
It's very professional. I will say it's really professional, and I understand why people can be turned off by the fact that we're practicing life-saving skills on the animal, because I wouldn't want to be sedated and sliced and diced up.
Yeah.
However, I will also say that this kind of training is probably done more to save people in combat zones than a lot of other medical training, because there's a huge difference about reading in a book how to do something, or someone telling you, you know, how to do it, and you understanding the theory of doing it or actually doing it.
Exactly.
And then at the end, the animal, like I said, it's sedated. They'll shoot it with different rounds. They'll cut it. And then the Marines and corpsmen are brought in, and they have to treat the patient and assess the patient, treat the patient. And then sometimes the instructors will come in and add new wounds, or they'll do certain things. Once it's all over with, the veterinarian comes around. And the entire time, the veterinarian's walking around making sure that the animals are sedated. And they want you to tell them that if there's a movement, if the animal like does any kind of movement, to let them know, and they up this sedation for it. But once it's all over, then the vet goes around and euthanizes all the animals. Yeah. Like I said, it's I can see why people on the outside looking in can look down on it, but those are people that have never had to see like an actual gunshot wound. Or, you know what? I mean, imagine being shot. Do you want the guy treating you to have read about how to fix you in a book, or he's actually done it on a living creature successfully? You know, that's how I kind of look at it. But so beyond the live tissue training for your first deployment, did you have any other specialized medical training, or was it just your normal? Or
no, it was just the basic like gamut of like going through core school and then FMTV and then live tissue.
Once you were assigned to your platoon and you did your live tissue training and stuff, that your whole platoon did this, or was it just a corpsman?
No, so this was just specifically for it was like I think they called it a provider course, but it was basically Navy. It was Navy medical officers and then Navy corpsmen.
Okay. So once you completed this training and stuff, and you're continuing with your workup, what was your role within the platoon? Were you just the corpsman that kind of hung back to treat people as they were injured, or were you an active member of the squad?
So the way that, and I want to say like most infantry units are the same, where maybe it's different, because I mean 2-8's literally the only infantry other than like 1-6 Alpha Company, but 2-8's the only unit I've hung around with and worked with. For the most part, they were my parent command for literally all of 5 years. So what the best way to put it is, like, when I wasn't doing medical, I was basically pretending to be an O3.
Okay.
Right? I would pull security. We would pull security. Fuck it. Wow, I'm trying to think what else. Yeah,
Did you have a designated role within the platoon or the squad outside of?
No, so the team. So I was usually with third fire team, and then that team was usually designated as like the aid and litter team.
Okay, makes sense.
And then other than that, though, if we didn't have a casualty, we were moving, gunning, doing most things.
So what do you think was the best like non-medical training you did before you deployed, and what was like the most effective that you think, and what was the least effective that you think was a complete waste of time?
Honestly, I like the idea of like, so for at least when it came down to it, the company attacks, like those, especially the ones at CAX, were looking back on it, and the trainings that I've never fucking ever fallen back on have been like the company attacks. Yeah. Like that has never been what's it called? I think the only thing I could ever take from the company attacks is like the appreciation for like the planning required to initiate it, and then like the controlling factor of like obviously like the staff NCOs, and then specifically like the squad leaders being able to implement their game plan moving forward, especially as the elements conducting their assault. But I think the company attack is something I've never fallen back on in training. Squad attacks I can understand because we use those tactics moving forward in Afghanistan, but the company attacks I've never done like a what's it called? I've never fallen back on that training.
You've never rushed as a company across an open field?
Yeah, that was. I remember like we did a company attack in AP Hill, and it was like so if anyone's never done like a company or like any sort of like big element like attack like that, there's usually like an assault section, like so like someone's gonna push through the objective or whatever, and those dudes usually have to run the entire fucking goddamn range.
And those ranges are not
they're
short.
Not short, dude. Holy fuck. I forget, we were, I think Sergeant Garrett was my squad leader at the time, and I was in his squad for 3rd Platoon, and I think we were the main, we were either the main or like supporting the main push for pushing through the objective for the last company attack for AP Hill. And I remember we were just running the backside of the range for its entirety until we basically like crested this hill and then pushed to the objective. But I remember fucking basically dying the entire time.
So for a movement like that, you're obviously in your combat load. How much weight do you think you were carrying at that time?
I mean, at the time, we didn't even have 180 rounds. It wasn't a full combat load, and it was still pretty fucking heavy. Like, I mean, that's always been the thing I've never really understood. Actually, it's like a budget thing, but it was always pretty hard to get like a full combat load, especially for an entire like rifle platoon or something like that. It was it was never what's it called? Like, here's a full like combat load, fucking run and gun. It was always like, here's 3 full magazines, fucking do what you can with it.
I mean, in reality, dude, when you and I were in Afghanistan together on the advisor team, I don't think I carried more than 4 magazines. I want to say I carried 4 magazines on my vest, and then, you know what? I think I only carried 3. I think I carried 3 magazines on my vest, 1 on my rifle, and then I had a box of ammo in my pack in case I needed it.
Yeah, so I had I still have my kit in my room, but I had 3 in front and then 2 on the side, but towards the end of the deployment, I put those 2 in my backpack.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah. So I know the plate carrier, mine was a bigger one. You're like extra small, probably.
Yeah.
So
you had and I think they probably still have the same issue, but you got the new one when we left, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had I forget the name of them, but I had the old plate carrier, like the ones they use in like 2008, 2009. Moving
that's
forward.
the one that had the clip closer to your shoulder, right up front, and the newer one had the clip farther back.
In the back, yeah.
Yeah.
So we never use it. I think I looked out doing a lot of things on that deployment, but I didn't do that SIF issue with you guys.
Oh, I wasn't. That was with the advisor team?
Yeah, with the advisor team, I did not do that SIF issue. So I didn't get the new SIF issue. So if you remember, like everyone took their packs out. I had an Alice pack.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even notice.
So I had my Alice pack. I was the only one who did.
We got the new, that's when they were giving out the new packs, huh?
Yeah, where everyone had to go through SIF. And I forget, I think it was Captain Falvey who was like, I was like, I have all my stuff. And he was like, do I have to get a new one? And he was like, yeah, you have to get a new one. But something fell through or another, and no one ever, which is one of the cool things about being a doc, no one ever really was fucking like, hey, does everyone have their stuff? It was just like, it fell on it, and I was like, I didn't get the new SIF, but I have everything I need.
Yeah.
So
going back to your deployment, when did you guys push out, and where did you go? And if you want to like go into some details about that.
Yeah. So what happened when we 2-8 got into, or when 2-8 was going into Afghanistan, there were like rumors that we were getting set up to the Sangin Valley, specifically Echo Company. And at the time,
what year was this?
This was 2000. This was late 2010. So this is I think we were coming back from or we were still in CAX, hearing rumors, and then
this is when 3.5 was there, right?
So
you were doing your workup when 3.5 was there.
We were doing our workup when 3.5 was there, and this was at the time when I think it had come down the line that, like, technically with all their casualties, specifically the KIA and their wounded in action, they were technically rendered combat ineffective.
Yeah, they had. So for those that aren't aware, in 2010, 3.5 had taken over the I think from 2.7. I think they took over from 2.7, Sangin Valley, and just immediately started taking casualties. I think they left Sangin with 25 KIA and I think over 100 wounded.
Yeah, over 100 wounded. And the statistics for those are...
And I mean, we were hearing about it back at Lejeune. I was still at Lejeune at the time. And because they were talking about possibly getting a whole platoon together to send over as combat replacements. Because every unit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I worked with like 3.6 and stuff, all these units, before they deploy, they designate combat replacements for that deployment, and then those guys deploy like 2 or 3 months later.
Yeah,
and they come in,
and then depending on like the needs, they'll deploy in like waves.
Yeah,
so they'll do like maybe like.
And what happened with 3.5 is that they overextended like the guys that they had designated as combat deployments and stuff. They didn't have enough to replace all their casualties, so I think they had to pull in guys.
Yeah, they did. So I think at the time 2.9 was out there. So at PBMU when we got there, we replaced 2.9 Echo Company. So 2.9 Echo Company was out there, and then 2.8 Echo Company replaced them, quote unquote. So we took up the area around northwest of Nole. For FOB Nole was the higher headquarters for 3.5 at the time.
And FOB Nole is Forward Operating Base Nole. So that'll be a bigger base in Sangin. That's where the Afghan Army Brigade headquarters was, or the Corps. Was it the Corps or Brigade?
I think it was the Brigade. I think it was the Kandak. So I think the Kandak is the what's it called? The Brigade.
The Brigade, yeah. So or battalion, whatever it was. So that's like a bigger base, and that's where like a command element works out of. And then, so you went to Nole, and then where'd you go from there?
So from Nole, we pushed out to PBMU, so Patrol Base Amu, which was north of Nole. So it was literally right off 611. It was technically the green zone, but it was the Sangin Valley split between two very distinct zones, and it's split basically like down the center with what's it called, by MSR 611, which is so Route 611 is like this big road that goes all the way up to the Gajaki Dam, basically, and then from there it's split to the right side when you're looking at it from north to south. The right side zone is the brown zone, and then
it's honestly crazy.
Brown.
If you're listening to this and you don't realize this, look up Sangin, Afghanistan on Google Maps.
Yeah.
And if you look just north of the city center, you'll see Route 611. It's the main road that goes through it, and everything to the west is green, and everything to the east is brown. And it's just like...
Oh, no, the opposite. Everything to the west is green.
That's what I said.
Oh, is that what... God damn it.
It's just so weird that the road itself, like, splits it.
Yeah.
And that one side, it's on the River Valley side, so it's just completely, like, thick tree lines, fields, and just...
Tons of fields.
Craziness. So you were at PB... What was it again?
Patrol Base and Mill.
So, first off, you want to tell the listeners that may not be familiar, what's the difference between a patrol base and a forward operating base?
A patrol base, it would be like it would house like a small element, specifically more than likely house like a platoon size element. So we would push our our platoon objectives out of there. So we'd push our local security patrols, set up like LPOPs if we needed to, which LPOPs would be like listening posts, observation posts. We'd push out like census patrols. So we do like, at the time we had like the bats and hides system, which would it was like a biometric system that we it was like a database biometric system for the local area.
And for those that don't know, that's what it does is it scans your iris, and it also you do fingerprints. And as a user, you're looking for the person that you're scanning and stuff to match, like get hit, because it has a database from the government of like terrorists and a whole list of people that need to be detained or questioned. So if they come up on that, we'll detain them and take them for further questioning or whatever needs to happen after that. If not, then they are now enrolled in the database and we have their information.
Yeah.
And then you go from there. But it's like a fingerprint and retina scanner.
Yep. So yeah, and so like the patrol bases, PBs in what's it called? In comparison with FOBs are smaller in size and usually house a platoon size element. There are like, you have like combat outposts will maybe what's it called, house something smaller, but I've heard of cops housing what's it called, platoon size elements. I mean,
I think when you get down to the FOB and cop, people kind of use that interchangeably.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I know what you're talking about. Sometimes if there's an operation or something, they'll send a squad out and they'll take over like an abandoned compound, and they'll work out of that for like a week or however long the operation is, and then they'll pull back to their patrol base. So what was life like on the patrol base? So you have a platoon of guys. How many guys do you think were total at your patrol base?
So with all of our like organic and inorganic assets, we were there was also an A&A detachment out there as well.
Okay.
So without the A&A detachment, we were pretty hefty. I mean, we were probably right around 40 people, if not more. So we had three squads, and then we had obviously like our machine gun. 51s were still a thing back then.
Yeah.
So we had our machine guns, 51s, our assault men. We had a mortar section, and engineers. So we were, we had everyone we needed moving forward. And then there was also 3-5 had a advisor team there. They had an embedded training team. So it was it wasn't like it was literally a team. It was, I think, 3 people.
Okay.
A corpsman, what's it called? Kirkpatrick, who super chill. But they had Kirkpatrick there. They had what's it called? I remember this Asian dude. I think he was like CA. It was civil affairs. So civil affairs. One of their officers was civil affairs, and then what's it called? Which the only time I've ever really dealt with civil affairs is when like we've killed like when we killed like the local livestock by accident, and we had to like pay them.
Yeah, they come around and you get the little yellow slip of paper.
Yellow slip of paper.
Like if you kill an animal or something, you give them like a little yellow slip of paper that says on it like,
how much?
Go to the nearest American position and they'll pay you money for it. Sorry, you know.
So,
and it's just and it tells how much they're owed too. So it's a weird thing, and not just animals, kids, people, family that have been killed. Also, it's crazy. It's a weird, and it's such a weird thing, and the Afghan mentality is not like, your American mentality. It's a very, agrarian society. So, these are people that are working off the land and stuff. And honestly, a lot of times you'll almost see the children treated almost like livestock. Like they're used as like tools for their farm. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So if a kid gets shot or something like that, it's obviously not a good thing, but some families don't really care too much, and there are cases where parents or someone would shoot their children if they heard a firefight or something like that. They'd shoot their own children so they can get money from the Americans, and it's just
really,
yeah. You never heard of that?
No, I mean that's the first I've ever heard of it. Like here.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, guys would show up to the FOB and just be like, yeah, this happened, and we're like, what are you talking about? I remember like one time they tried to say that a kid had been shot by us, and the corpsman there was like, that's a 7.62 round like wound. Like you could tell the difference, obviously.
I mean, yes and no, depending. I mean, yeah, it's a yes and no. What's it called? Answer. There's sometimes you can't tell, other times you can.
Yeah, but I think this was one of those times. I don't know, but I'm just saying that I've seen it happen. I've seen it. And it's just because I talked to the civil affairs guys.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it was like a recorded
Yeah,
dude, that's pretty insane.
Yeah, and you're just like, what the hell is going on here? Like,
Jesus.
I mean, so that's unfortunate. So okay, you were at FOB. What was it again? FOB Emu?
No, FOB Amu. PB Amu. Jesus.
PB Amu.
Yeah, PB Amu. Patrol base Amu. I think it was what's it called? Pashtun for something, or Dari, but I'm not entirely sure what it was.
So during that deployment, what was your like main mission there, and how do you think the deployment went overall?
So we were there for what's it called?
Was this you were injured on your first deployment, correct?
Yeah, this was
okay.
This
so
was that
I'll let you talk about that. If
I was what's it called? I was a 2-8 Aggro Company 3rd Platoon at the time 4th Squad. So what they did when we got to Afghanistan, they not split, but they created like a 4th Squad, and that was to what's it called? To kind of mitigate casualties moving when we would step off on patrol. So we wouldn't have like a 14-man squad like online, like ranger filing through what's it called, the brown zone or whatever. So it was a smaller. It was still like maybe like a 10 or 12-man element with attachments, and it came out to like a squad plus size element moving forward because we attached we had A&A attachments as well. So it would be that size, but like with all of our assets, if we stepped off as a squad in the Sangin Valley with the A&A and with like machine guns and 51s, we'd be a squad plus size element. Okay. So with the smaller sizes moving or stepping off on our patrols, like we'd be like a squad plus size element. So we'd be what we would be normally, but not too large. Where was he? What were we talking about?
Oh, just I mean, if you wanted to talk about how you received your Purple Heart, I mean, on you.
Yeah. So what's it called? The Brown Zone is historically known as a what's it called? Especially like where we were building 2-8, which is actually that's pretty hilarious that we got blown up at building 2-8, but the Brown Zone is historically known as what's it called, like ambush points for the local insurgents. And
I think that was consistent the entire time.
It was, and mine for both the last times, both of my deployments there was consistently an ambush point, especially the area around Nole and around Patrol Base Amil, because those at the time like those compounds were abandoned. So there were for the most part, there were no locals living in the immediate area east of Amil. And so at the time, like, we would push out local security patrols, double check. We would push out local security patrols around like the Brown Zone. I don't remember how many IEDs we found. I was literally there for like all of like 3 weeks. So like to what's it called? Make a long story short, we were basically we had taken contact from building 2-8 at some point or another. I think the day before or earlier that day. So we I think it was the day before. I think another squad had taken contact coming back into Patrol Base Amil, and then so we sent out. And I'm not gonna what's it called? Hit exactly like why we went back out there to building 2-8. That's not my place to kind of like make that judgment. I'll leave that to like the squad leaders and the staff NCOs who made that decision.
What did you like disagree with the fact that you went there?
So like that was like one of the things that 3-5 we do what we call like a RIP, like it's a relief in place. And in that brief, they were like, "Hey, like don't go in the Brown Zone. If you go in the Brown Zone, know that they fucking obviously like if you find one ID, there's gonna be a secondary. You find a secondary, tertiary, so forth and so on." They were like, don't go in the Brown Zone. Don't clear buildings in the Brown Zone. I remember that vividly. They were like, don't fucking clear buildings in the Brown Zone. It's an ambush. Or like there's an IED there. Like that was like one of the big things is like, don't clear buildings in the Brown Zone. And that's exactly what we did. And I'm not entirely sure like what the main mission was or what the objective was to go back there after we got shot at. But we went back there. And then, so at the time I was attached to Bo's team, and so Bo's fire team. Bo was one of my what's it called? Bo was one of my Marines, and he was my team leader, and we were all like best friends because we initially were all in what's it called? We were all in Kilgore Squad, so 3rd Platoon. But then once we got into in country, they split us up, and then Bo became team leader. I think he was second. No, I think Bo was either second or third fire team leader for 4th Squad.
Is he a corporal?
No, he's a lance corporal. So that was like one of the other things too. Like, so like here now, like I know the Marine Corps, you can't be like a what's it called, a squad leader or like a team leader without being a corporal, especially in the infantry now. Going to Afghanistan, like it wasn't unheard of to have like lance corporal team leaders or even fucking what's it called, like corporal squad leaders. So Lance Corporal Bo was my team leader going in, but at the time, like we basically set up security around Building 2-8, and then we were, I guess, like investigating like known firing points around the area. So we made entrance into one of them. So Scupion, who was one of our 51s, him and Shaw, basically they had like a line charge, set up a line charge, and created like our own entrance, our own like breaching point onto one side of the building, cleared one side of Building 2-8.
So real quick for people that don't know, the buildings in Afghanistan are all like
Mud.
Solid mud.
Yeah.
These guys make their own mud bricks out in the sun. They make a mud wall, and then they cover it in a mud coating. So these walls are like impervious to whatever the word is.
They're dense. They're real dense.
Yeah, if you shot it with a 50 cal, it's not going through that wall.
So they
used a breaching charge, which is a C4 charge, to create your own hole in the wall.
Yeah.
And why would you do that?
So the idea behind that is like you don't want to go through known entrance points, which is like kind of like the well, I'll get into that here in a second because that's how we got blown up. But you don't want to go through already like established breaching points, because what will happen is like the local insurgents will backlay IEDs. So if you breach an area and they know that you would more than likely go back, they would backlay IEDs. They'd call what you call like doormat IEDs, and then they'd set up They'd set up not firing points, but they'd set up ambushes at those specific areas. And then from there, they'll backlay IEDs and then expect you to come through that. So basically like that human idea of like going through the path of like least resistance, right? So like that was like one of the things we would never do, or that was one of like our SOPs was that, you would take the path of most resistance to initiate those, or to move through an area, whether or not you're clear or trying to clear a wadi or clear a building.
It's similar to changing up your like patrol routes every time. Yeah. That way you're not going down the same road every day and eventually, stepping on a charge. So
yeah. So we cleared our own entrance into Building 2-8 on one side of the wall, cleared it, and it was and then on that side, you could see murder holes, murder holes are like these tiny. They're like firing points that I mean, we do the same thing in Iraq. So.
Think of like a castle that has like those little parapets that are on the side, those little holes that people would shoot out of. Those are the murder holes that he's talking about.
So we found murder holes on one side and then spent casings. So I think it was like 7.62 by 5.1 or something like that. Which most round, I think the Dragunov is 7.60 by 5.1 and also the PKM. Or no, I think PKM's 7.60 by 3.9.
I think whatever.
Yeah, so whatever. We found fucking rounds or spent casings on one side, so we knew that was like the known firing point, which we already fucking knew that going in there, but now it's like established, known firing point. So at the time, we decided to push out and then clear the other side of the building. Now, this is like the crazy part about like, so there was already there was already a historic breaching point on the other side of the compound we were going through. So there was already an established entrance for us. Now going in there, we swept up to it. We fucking sent our
was this an actual like entrance built for the building?
No.
This was another hole in the wall.
It was another hole in the wall. So
okay.
It was either the Brits or 3.5 or 2.9 Echo who had cleared and pushed into that building at some point or another. We swept up to it. We fucking
when he says he swept up to it, he's talking about they used the metal detector kind of mine. Think of like the old school World War II minesweeper looking dude.
I think they call it Valams. We swept up with our Valams. And then from there we sent our working dog. Our working dogs are like their quote unquote like bomb sniffing dogs. Swept up. She didn't pick up anything, and then we even blew a line charge through the door. Like we took C4 line charge, tossed it through the entrance, detonated it, And for those of the people who don't know, like, you'll throw a line charge through like what you think would be like a known like ID location, and the idea behind that is to set off what you call a sympathetic detonation. And so like you blow, same thing that you would do like in a video game.
Yeah.
Right. If you think that there's like a fucking mine at a door for like Call of Duty, you'll roll a grenade and try to set that off.
Or you shoot it. And,
exactly.
Yeah, you try to blow it up before you step on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the idea behind that. So like going in, we were like, dude, we're clear. Like, that's pretty.
Swept up to it. Dog said it was good. Yeah. Threw a line charge in there. No sympathetic detonations from that. And
so we thought, I mean, dude, going in there, is that specific area, especially that entrance, I thought we were good. I think I think I can say that most people stepping through that, once we did all those things, we were like, there's got to be nothing there. So at the time, so like I said, I was with Bo's fire team, and then I went with Webster. So Webster, I think, was first team leader. So Lance Corporal Webster, led his team up there, and him and then John. So John Curtin was our radio operator he wasn't a radio man, but he was a radio operator for that platoon. So he was an 03 carrying a radio.
Okay.
So he had what's it called? What is it? The 117s? Big green ones?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what you're using at the
PRC
time, but probably a 117.
Yeah. So John had our radio, and then I was in front of John, and then Lance Corporal Webster was in front of me. So we were at the tail end of the team clearing that building. What's it called? And so they only sent one fire team, obviously, to clear that building, while the rest held security, moving to clear it. And then so we stepped up, swept up, and then started clearing it, moving forward. We were moving slow. It wasn't like, don't think of when we say like we were clearing the building because of the ID threat. We weren't clearing it like, I don't think like SEAL Team 6, like fucking running through compounds or whatever, or like moving sexily through compounds and like, slow, smooth as fast type of thing. Like, we were clearing it more scared of the IED threat than we were of getting shot at type of thing, which was honestly most of the Sangin Valley for anyone who had been there.
Yeah.
So we were clearing it slowly, pushing forward. I think Hadel, who we were talking about before, Hadel was one of our engineers, and I think he was the one. I don't think Hadel was on that. Oh, Hadel came afterwards. My bad. So this is all super spotty for me. But so we were clearing forward. What's it called? Whoever was point man, I think it might have been Arp or Shaw. Whoever was point man thought they found something, right? Like an ID or something just looked kind of off. So what they did was they stopped, and at that point, most of us were in. We were already in the compound, and so they pushed. Were
you inside the building, or you were just inside the wall?
We were inside the building, quote unquote. So we were inside the building, and then there was a wall in front of us, and a bank left, and then right into what's it called, which was like an open area into the rest of the compound. And then so from there, they were like, "Hey, we think we found something," so they pushed us out. So at this point, there was still an ID there. So at this point, it was like a doormat ID inside the building. So at this point, everyone in front of us had stepped over the ID, and then pushing out, Webster, myself, and Curtin stepped over it again. And then it was when they were like, "Hey, like, you guys are good, come back in." We pushed back in, and then that's when the ID was initiated by John.
That's crazy, man. So swept up to the building, sent the dog up to the building, sent a line charge
through the building.
Half the team stepped over the IED, not knowing it was there.
Yeah.
And then stepped back over it coming out of the building. And then coming back in, that's when it finally got set off.
So this was
it a pressure plate IED?
So I want to say that they had reported it as a pressure plate, but that was the other thing that like I haven't honestly really talked to a lot of people about what they thought it was, because they threw a fucking line charge on that thing. And then maybe it was like buried or something at that point, and then the dirt had fucking disturbed the area around it. Because I know like if it like freshly dug IEDs, if you fucking dig it out and then toss fresh dirt on it and it rains, it cements and compacts over like the jug, and it'll take actually some of the fucking initial it'll dampen like the initial explosion. So
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure like what the science is behind it, or like I'm sure like an EOD tech would be fucking more qualified to be like, hey, this is what happened. But I'm not sure if it was an ID or if it was an RC ID or a remote control ID or something like that. I mean, we had our Thor on, but fucking so
Like the Thor was like
so
we were
wishy-washy.
carrying that thing
Yeah,
around,
dude.
man. So the IED was initiated, and then
So
what?
the ID was initiated, and at that time, I was rendered unconscious. John lost both his. I think John's. So I talked to my buddy John, and John's. I'm pretty sure he said he was conscious the entire time, and which was insane because I'm pretty sure he hit the roof when he stepped on it. But he lost both his legs in the explosion. I took shrapnel to the left side of my face, basically the left side of my body, and to my face, specifically like my eyes or the left side of my eye. So
Were you wearing iPro?
I was wearing BCGs. So like
No.
BCGs, yeah.
You were BCG.
So for those of you who don't know, BCGs are they call them like birth control glasses. They're the ugliest fucking glasses you can get, but it's boot camp issue.
Yeah.
So like they're like these big fucking goo. Actually, in all honesty, like these are probably like hipster glasses now. Like people would think I would be cool wearing.
They changed it. They don't. You no longer get the BCGs.
They're black now, right?
Yeah,
like
now
black
they're more
glasses.
hipster like.
Yeah.
So do you think the glasses saved your eyes?
Oh yeah, if I wasn't wearing, this is why like I will be like, yeah, if you guys go on combat deployments, if you guys fucking think you're gonna have an ID threat, fucking wear iPro. I fucking easily, I hands down think I would have lost my eye if I was not wearing iPro.
How far apart were you from, or how far apart was everybody when the IED actually was initiated?
Dude, we were close. Webster was fucking not even 5 feet in front of me. John was not fucking more than 5 feet behind me. We were close. We were real close. I don't know how big the ID was. I'm not gonna. What's it called? I honestly have no idea how big the ID was. I remember someone telling me, but I'm not entirely sure. But obviously the ID was big enough to to take John's legs and then obviously knock me out. And then Webster took shrapnel to his face as well, missed his eyes, so he looked out with that. But he had a fucking gnarly fucking shrapnel wound to his left leg. He had to get like a fasciotomy, or basically compartment syndrome. So I was rendered unconscious. Like I was fucking knocked out. When they had moved us to like our CCP,
Which is what?
our casualty collection point. I was so like, I got rendered unconscious and I had like short-term amnesia. Like I woke up and I had no idea where the fuck I was. And it wasn't until like they started moving me to the CCP that I started like piecing things back together. But like so John lost both his legs, and then once they Scupion and Shaw. So Scupion was a 51, and I want to say like those were the dudes who put the tourniquets on John. Hands down, so this is why like cross training in the military, especially in the infantry, it's got to be a thing, and it should be a fucking thing. Like medical shouldn't be fucking something that like only the fucking only the CLS Marines do. Like medical, especially fucking tourniquet drills. Like those are some things like everyone should be comfortable doing, because had we been further from like our like the attack where it happened, we were not even like a click out. We were maybe a click out. We were not that far from a patrol base. When that attack happened, 4th Squad lost their team leader, their radio operator, and their corpsman in one blast. So that that's at that point when we got hit, that's a mass CAS.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you're combat ineffective too,
Yeah,
because
for
now
sure.
you've lost communications and your
Exactly.
leadership.
But
so.
we lucked out like being that close.
So were you the only 3 casualties from that?
Yeah, so from there, and then so we got hit, and then shortly afterwards it was I'm pretty sure it was a U-shaped ambush. But we took contact afterwards. So we took contact. So this is why like when I talk about it, it's kind of like difficult for me to like piece it together, because I had one eye, I had short-term amnesia, so it's kind of hard for me like to be like this is exactly what happened, because I wasn't like all there. But I'm pretty sure it was a U-shaped ambush, or it was obviously like some No,
some sort.
Some
Quit using that
sort.
H.
Yeah, I was like, what? Yeah, so it was some sort of ambush, and or we started taking like pretty effective like fire. At that point, they had spun. They were Shaw was talking back to the platoon, spun QRF because I remember first squad came out there. So they had Crooney, who was first squad, and then they sent what's it called, Kuntz, who was the other corpsman. So we had 3 corpsmen with us, not counting Kirkpatrick, who was the ETT corpsman for 3-5. So they sent what's it called, both the corpsmen from 208 3rd Platoon out there, which was fucking good because we needed them. What's it called? And then yeah, so from there, like that's when like obviously like training takes place, but specifically like the medical training for had my Marines not been properly cross-trained in medical, it would have been hell. And I don't think John would have survived had fucking what's it called, the Marines in our platoon, in our squad, in our team, had they not been cross-trained in medical as efficiently as they were. That's always been like my biggest especially like for my second deployment and getting back to 2-8 and my third deployment, I've always been pretty big on Marines knowing medical, big on like the combat side of it. Like that was always like one of the things for the corpsmen coming in out with like, especially the junior corpsmen, and I always push them to be like, hey, like be cross-trained, like know your fucking Marines' job. What's it called? You don't have to run around with like a Thul's handbook, but like fucking at least be confident in what everyone else is doing, so that if someone else goes down, you're at least competent enough to like run that job, that mission for a little bit. Yeah, and then
I think that's definitely one of the most important things is cross training, and it's something I don't think big Marine Corps, like conventional regular Marine Corps, does enough of, is cross training. I don't think they push it enough, especially in medical and comm. I think too many guys don't know basic medical stuff, and too many guys don't know basic comm stuff. Because you're saying your team leader was taken out and your radio operator, and if that radio was damaged or something happened with it and they had to redo it, now someone else needs to be able to pick it up. And I doubt you'd have to program it, but you'd at least have to understand how to work it, get it to the right net. Who do I need to call? Yeah. And unfortunately, that's just I just think it's, I don't know if it's a time thing or what, but that's definitely something that's not drilled enough and cross-trained. You can never do it enough. No, doing comm and medical is something you can never do enough.
Especially comm. I think medical, everyone like kind of harps on. I think it's like everyone harps on medical. Like that's always been like the thing rightly I remember. So. But rightly so for sure. I think comm is something I never really appreciated up until our deployment, when we went to that comms class, because I was like, yo, there's actually a lot you have to do to fucking get one of these running, especially like fucking loading crypto and shit. And I was like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah, 117 is a little bit more difficult than programming like a 119, where it's like clear program still or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, so I think what's it called? For sure, cross training has to be a thing. It's
so after you were injured and you guys got ambushed, and you obviously didn't fight through the ambush. You were a casualty, so you didn't have any part in the defense of the ambush.
No. I mean, the most so like that was like one of the things I remember. I tried to talk. I honestly don't think I fucking rate it, but I got a NAM with a V for it. But I basically like tried to help like talk my Marines through like stabilizing, which was fucking damn near impossible because I fucking could barely see out of my eyes. So I tried to do what I could. But there were so many people on that fucking mission that didn't get fucking awards that should have gotten them, that's the one thing about the Marine Corps that's always been like, unless you got shot, like you're fucking not getting an award, dude. Like it's rough. Cause so like the best way to put it is like we had Watkins and Hato who came on the QRF. We were taking like effective rounds. Like I remember like rounds skipping around like the CCP, and those dudes put their fucking bodies between us and those rounds. And the thing is, like, the difference between them not getting a fucking, like a Medal of Honor or like a goddamn Bronze Star with a V was they didn't get hit.
Yeah. Yeah, the act was still there, but not the...
Yeah. Or like one of them, like Goswick swept the fucking LZ while getting shot at. Nothing.
Really?
Yeah. And I was just like, dude, what the fuck?
So were you medevac by air then?
Yeah, we were medevac by Tricky. So Tricky was...
Tricky flight coming in?
Yeah. So Tricky was the British medevac bird. Forget what the actual bird was. It was
a Chinook. It's
Chinook,
a So they had a specialized Chinook. We actually Cam and I did a tour of it.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, yeah, I thought we did. Cam and I did a tour of one once we got to Afghanistan on our third deployments. I mean, these things are badass. They have to slow down so that the gunships can keep up with them because they're so fast. Because the gunships are their security. When you go inside of it, it's outfitted for any kind of casualty that you could take.
Yeah, but it's what's it called? It's built for urgent medevacs. So it's so what they do. So one of the cool things about Tricky is that they prep for surgery on the flight back.
Yeah, they have flight surgeons that are on the bird that are getting guys ready to roll right into the medical center at Leatherneck.
Camp
Bastion. At Bastion. And roll right into surgery. So, I mean, you really can't ask for a better platform to be medevaced in if you unfortunately have that.
Yeah, so that's like one of the things is like, I think a lot of people overlook it, but at fucking the height of the war, and maybe even now, I'm not sure if like Camp Bastion, that trauma center is still there, but at the height of the war, the Camp Bastion Trauma Center was the best trauma center like in the world. Yeah,
I mean I remember when you and I were actually going down to visit the trauma center. Remember when we
were
heading
like
down
mass
there?
cas with like civilians.
Yeah, there was we were walking down to meet with the squadrons just to kind of give a face to face and talk about their capabilities and introduce ourselves. And as we were walking down that side of the base, Tricky landed. Yeah. And I think they pulled 6 casualties off or something like that.
And
it was
a
just
big
like,
mass cas.
It's just something, man, you see it and you're like, Jesus Christ. And I think there was a British nurse standing there and she was just like, oh my God. And then someone said that, I think someone said a V-bid had gone off somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
like
where it came from, but it's crazy, but it's not uncommon over there. It's just one of those things you see it and you're like, Jesus. And then, okay, let's go do what we got to do now. So you were brought to Camp Bastion. From how long were you at Camp Bastion before you were medevac further?
Like literal like hours. So what's it called? So for us, like so Webster and I didn't have. They kept Webster in country, but so you get medevac to the States for eye, life, or limb. So like the idea behind that is that if there's a threat to life, threat to limb, or threat to your eyes, they medevac you back to the States.
Through Germany, right?
Through Germany, yeah. So I went through Landstuhl. But so I got initially like they weren't sure if they were going to keep me in country because they can keep if your injuries. So like technically, like let's say like you get a through and through your leg or something, and it's like it didn't hit any fucking big what's it called? Any big systems or anything like that, or it didn't fucking rupture it. All you need is like a couple weeks to recover. They can keep you in country and then send you back to your unit, which is what they tried to do with Webster. What they did with me was I was medevac with Curtin, or John. So John obviously was getting sent back to the States, but they sent him from Bastion to Kandahar. And at Kandahar, I saw Dr. I still remember his name, Dr. Probst, who was an ophthalmologist, and he saw my eye, and I had a hyphema. So hyphema is just literally it's just blood in the eye, but my eye was swollen shut. And he wasn't able to do like a proper assessment then and there because of all the swelling. So he was like, hey, like so this is like one of the things where like, I think he said this to be like, I don't want to say you're going to be okay. But at the time, like all I heard was that like, hey, I'm not sure if you're going to lose your eyesight, or I'm not sure if you're going to lose your eye, but it looks like you're going to be okay. But there's a chance you could lose your eye. And I was just like, I mean, like, you could have just said the first part, like, that would have been fine. Or, like, been like, what's it called? We got to run more tests before I say anything definitive. But at the time, I was just like, oh, I mean, like, I guess that's cool.
Yeah.
So,
a maybe's better than definitely.
Yeah,
your eye,
for sure, dude. So from there, he was like, so that was, like, the determining factor for me to get sent back to the States. So from Bagram, from Kandahar, we went to Bagram. And the entire time I was with Curtin. Or John. So his name is John Curtin. So that's why I keep fucking going behind. So John was packaged and he wasn't conscious he wasn't at least when he was with me, he wasn't conscious for the fight. So obviously they kept him under. Under, and when I say under like anesthesia, like not underwater or something like that. This isn't like Star Wars where they have like the bacta tank. But so they kept him under anesthesia while we transported. So I was with him through like most of it, and I wasn't until Landstuhl that I got to see him conscious. It was like right after, I guess, one of his bigger surgeries. So Landstuhl, Germany is like the big what's it called? It's a big medical center for most wartime casualties before they get sent back to the States for further treatment, whether or not that's Walter Reed. I don't know if Walter Reed's a hospital anymore, but whether or not it's Walter Reed or Bethesda, which is one of the bigger ones. And then, so we both got sent to Landstuhl, and that was the first time I saw John, and it was like, that was one of the things I kept asking, was that like if he was going to be okay, because obviously, like, from my training, which wasn't a lot at that point, but I knew that like with his injuries that, you know, it's not like touch and go, but I knew that there was a chance he could not make it back.
Yeah, it's pretty precarious.
Yeah. What's it called? So I was always checking, always double checking, asking the nurses, even if they couldn't tell me anything. I just wanted to know if he was still around. When I got to Landstuhl, that's all I did was ask about John. And so, what's it called? And I forget her name because she was fucking awesome. But I think there was an army, like, she was like an army nurse, but I don't remember her name. She was just like this tiny woman, but she fucking helped me out throughout all of it. And I just kept asking about John, and so she would check for me. She would come back and she'd be like, hey, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but, you know, like, he went through like so-and-so as far as like surgery. And I was like, at the time I was like, I don't know what the fuck that means. Like, could you like let me know like if that's like a good thing or a bad thing? And she was like, oh, you know, it's a good thing. That means he's like recovering, or like, and so she hooked me up with John got finished with the surgery. They woke him up and I got to see him. And that was obviously like pretty fucking emotional.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. So this is the first time that you guys have seen each other
since
the accident or the attack.
And so I was just happy that he was, what's it called, fucking alive.
Alive, yeah.
Yeah, and I like one of the things that stuck with me with what a fucking stupid ass question I asked. It was just so fucking dumb, and I hate myself for asking it. But like one of the first things I asked him, like I was just like, "How are you doing?" And I was just like, the minute the words left my mouth, I was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, dude?" But it was like something that like resonated with me was that he was just obviously like resonated with me, but it was like he said something along the lines of like it's painful and it hurts, and I was just like, fuck, dude. Like so like that's the thing, is like you expect it to be painful and for it to hurt, but for someone that you fucking care about or whatever, and you're just like, to hear from him, it was just like, Jesus. So that was rough, and like I said, I fucking hate myself for asking that, but yeah, that was just like and then
and this was still in Germany, right?
This was still in Germany, and then afterwards we got sent back to we got sent to, what is that airbase in? Is it Andrews Air Force Base that's in Virginia?
You mean Dover?
No, I think we got.
I think Andrews is there too. Dover's where
the presidential like.
Well, Dover's where all like the KIAs come through.
Okay, no, I don't think it was Dover. I think it was Andrews Air Force Base, but yeah, no, actually there were no KIAs on our flight. We were all wounded, or like some dudes who were just getting medevac home for like there was some
for whatever reason.
Yeah,
not everybody that gets medevaced out of Afghanistan.
Yeah,
some people get medevac because they broke their ankle playing soccer.
No, that's exactly what it was. It was
like,
it? Yeah, there was this one dude who was like, so we at Andrews Air Force Base. It's like a transit system. So basically, you get set up in like a hospital room, not a hospital room, but it's like a patient. It's like a patient holding center, right?
Like,
and it was like, kind of like a ward, and it's like you're basically just waiting for transport home. And I think they were in the army or something like that, but there was these three dudes, and they all acted like they knew each other. So I guess they were in the same unit or whatever. They're all talking about, not in the same unit, but obviously like they knew each other or whatever, or maybe they'd like talk.
Maybe they just knew each other through the army, you know,
probably,
or they have the common, you know.
Oh yeah,
common background.
There's that too. But I remember like one of the dudes was like, "Yeah, dude, I think one of the dudes like blew his ACL playing fucking football." in I think it was like Bagram or Kandahar, and I was just like, what the fuck? And I remember just sitting there being like, what the hell is this? And then another one had fallen and then like banged up his, like he fucking like broke his orbital bone. He had fallen, broken his orbital bone, and like hitting the corner of a table.
AKA got his ass kicked.
Yeah, dude, yeah. But I was like, that sounds painful in and of itself. But like how like, I was just thinking, I was like, dude, that's so anticlimactic.
I would be one, like if I came back for breaking my ankle playing soccer and I'm on the same flight with a bunch of dudes that had been shot or blown up, I would just be like, geez, I feel like a piece of crap right now. And then like, it's funny because you talk to guys and it's like war experiences may vary for real.
Yeah,
like there's a big difference. That's the big secret in the military. Something that I've learned talking with college students since I'm out now and stuff like that is everybody thinks that if you're in the military, you're going to the war and it's going to be crazy and it's going to be combat. And I'd say less than 10% of the people that go to Afghanistan go to actual like FOBs or cops out there in like the wildlands, like fighting. Most of them, not most, maybe most of them are on these major bases like Bagram and Leatherneck and stuff like that. And that's not to down their service or anything like what they did, because that's, those are the people that are saving lives, that are bringing, you're coming back so that they can save you and stuff like that. However, there is a distinct difference in guys that have gone out and, played in the two-way shooting match with the enemy and the guys that went to name one of the big bases, Leatherneck, and, had bad days because Green Bean was out of the, the MOAC, the mother of all coffees, something like that. So yeah, that'd be rough, man. I would kind of feel, and it's nothing they did, they don't choose it,
dude,
but
not at all. It was, what's it called? It was just like one of those things where like, I think it's like as shitty as like some of our experiences were when it came to like obviously like the war fighting part of it, because there are like shitty experiences with that at the very least. And I, what's it called? Obviously, like I have friends that, or not friends, but like other Marines that I, became really close with, and they were like, they had the complete opposite experiences where so personally, I think I looked out going to the Sangin Valley and fucking fighting on those 3 deployments. But I feel like people live in their own personal hell when they train for something and never actually get to do it.
Yeah, and that's hard for somebody on the outside looking in. When I came in and they made me a mechanic and I wanted to be infantry, and people would be like, why don't you like doing this? Why do you want to deploy? And I'd tell family and stuff, like I'd want to deploy, like I'm trying to go to Iraq, because I came in towards the end of the Iraq war, so I was trying to get over there before the war ended, because nobody wanted to be the guy that was in during the war and didn't get the opportunity to go, and people would ask you like, why do you want to go do this? And it's like the only way I could explain it to them, I'm like, you know what, it's like practicing for a football game for years and never getting to play. Exactly, you want to go out and play the game. As messed up as that may sound, most people didn't join the military, especially combat arms, to not, to sit in an office or not do anything. And I would say that, not everybody wants to go to war. War sucks. And I think a lot of people's minds changed about playing in the game once they got there and the game started for real.
Yeah. And I think, so part of it, I think, is not so much the, I think everyone like kind of like hyper focuses on like the combat part when it's like war sucks. Honestly, some of the worst parts of like being in Afghanistan were like some of like the brief living conditions, right? Or like being like setting up an LPOP and then it raining, right?
That's the little things.
Yeah.
Eating the same meal for a month because that's what they ordered, or there's no MREs or
exactly. So it was just like everyone like hyper focuses on like, dude, like getting shot at must suck. Is like, yeah, but honestly, like, you know what sucks? Fucking goddamn eating fucking shitty MREs or what, Szechuan chicken for 8 months. Yeah, So
what? How would you rate your medical care that you received from the time you were injured to the point where they deemed you fit to come back on duty full time?
So when I mean, as far as like
if you want to like maybe describe the injury, like your full list of injuries that you had, and then maybe the goods and bads of the medical care and what you maybe would have liked to have seen handled better, or maybe
okay.
you know something.
So
like
for
that.
me, it was I had a unique experience. So I got blown up. I took shrapnel to the left side of my face. Periorbital. So it's like on the what's it called, the outside of my left eye. And then I took shrapnel to my arm and then to my leg. The one to my leg is just like, it was literally like a scratch, right? But I took some decent shrapnel to my left arm, and I have like a piece of metal or like shrapnel in my arm.
You still do.
I still do, and it's like it's super small. They're what they had told me was like it's super small, super thin. Like it would do more damage for us to try to take it out than keep it in.
Is that the only piece that they know still
Yeah,
in
actually,
you?
so I had a piece of shrapnel embedded in my ear, and there was just like a piece of rock. But it fell out recently. Like I have it in like a tiny fucking mason jar.
That's funny. I was going to ask that because you hear about guys that have been blown up and stuff before, and for people that aren't military, when we say blown up, like that sounds crazy, and then it sounds like you imagine like someone's like exploding.
Yeah.
But blown up is just a term that we use for just you got hit by an IED. Not necessarily you were not necessarily injured, but you got blown up. You obviously were injured. And
yeah.
But it's funny, like I remember reading stories and hearing stories about some of the older vets that have been blown up before, and years after, you know, like they're like popping it like a pimple on their arm, and it pulls out a little piece of shrapnel from the war, and it's like, so that's cool. You kept it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed it before, and I was like, and I was like looking at pictures because initially I was like, I never really looked at my ear, and then I was like. So I had like started wrestling again. So this is when I was out. So I started wrestling again. I started developing cauliflower ear on like the left side of my ear, and I was like, I don't remember that bump there. And so I started like looking back at pictures, and then I started to see that I never had it until after I got injured. And so I was like, oh, maybe that's like a piece of shrapnel. And then at the end of the day too, I was also like, because it started to turn fucking black, and I was like, that's not good, because it started as like pink and then started to like change color, and I was like, I mean, could that be like something cancerous or like something like maybe like an infection? And then all of a sudden, like this was like fucking maybe like 6 months ago, like I noticed like something like protruding out. So I took like kind of like a piece of I have scalpels. I took a scalpel and I cut it, and then I just started pushing it out, and it was like a piece of rock.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah. So
what do you think overall? Do you think the military, the Navy medical system, or the military medical system did a good job of rehabilitating you, getting you back ready to come back into the fight?
So my issue wasn't the whole like rehabilitation part. So my issue with it was, my care at Bastion, Kandahar, Bagram, Landstuhl, fucking awesome. My care at Camp Lejeune, awesome. As far as like my wartime injuries, right? My issue wasn't the rehabilitation part. My issue was getting back with my unit. So what happens with corpsmen who get attached to Greenside is we're not attached to 2-8 as a whole. We're attached to 2nd Marine Division. So what happens with that is that billet is those billets are for deployable people only. When I got blown up and sent back home, they put me on what you call limited duty. So I was on, when we call it LIMDU, so I was on LIMDU when I got out, or when I got back to my unit. Corpsmen on LIMDU in a Greenside battalion, they pull out and then send them to the hospital, right? So as in like Camp Lejeune Naval Hospital.
Yeah, because you can't, exactly. You got to be useful.
Yeah, you can't be, you're not going to be able to deploy. So my issue was I wanted to go back, right?
You wanted to go back to so at this point, was the unit still in Afghanistan?
The unit was still in
trying
Afghanistan,
to get back to them?
I was trying to get back to them.
Okay.
So like I got put on LIMDU and I was trying to get out. I didn't know that getting put on LIMDU was so fucking hard to get out. Like you actually have to go through like a gamut of of exams and doctors to sign off and be like, hey, like he's good, he's rehabilitated, he can fucking deploy. I looked at, so basically I did not want to go to the hospital.
To work.
Yeah, I wanted to stay at 2-8 and I wanted to stay in Greenside. Yeah. So it was like rough because they were like, the hospital was calling me. They were like, hey, like you have orders to fucking come to Camp Lejeune Naval Hospital. And I like drug my feet. I was like, I'm still checking out. And it came to the point where fucking, I forget the name of this dude, but I think it fell on this HM1 to get me to the hospital. And he was like, hey, you're fucking like 3 weeks past checking in. He was like, "Where the fuck are you?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, so I talked to, I forget his name, but HM3 Jason, and I forget his last name, but Jason was the BAS liaison 428 at the time." And I was like, "Look, I need to get off Limdu. I don't want to go to the hospital. I want to go back as a combat, because I got blown up fucking a month into my deployment."
Were you there long enough to even get your sea service deployment, or did you get a sea service deployment?
Yeah, so
because you have to be there for like 60 days, right?
It's with the Purple Heart. It's like automatic.
Oh, okay. I was like, that'd be so messed up if I
got a Purple Heart, yeah, and not that. Yeah,
you didn't get the campaign ribbon or anything.
Yeah, so no. That would fucking be shitty.
That is crazy,
or not shitty. That would just be weird to explain.
So did you end up getting attached back to the RBE element, the remain behind element? I was
initially attached to the remain behind element, and then from there, what's it called? The liaison for 28, the RBE element for 28, BAS, helped me out. He was like, "Hey, look, like I tried to talk to, at the time we're 6 Reg, 28 RBE fell underneath 6 Regiment." So he was like, "I'll talk to the chief there." And at the time, Chief Motts was fucking all about me fucking going back. And I was like, "Look, I want to get off this." And so I did whatever exams I needed to do. He signed off on it, and the medical officer at 6 Red signed off on it. So I didn't have to go to fucking Camp Israel Naval Hospital to basically like kill myself. So I got done that. Started working at 6 Reg for a little bit, and then 1-6 Charlie Company took. I think it was like back to back, like a week. It was like a week or 2 week span. Like they took 2 Corpsman KIA.
It was actually so. Charlie 1-6. I was in Afghanistan. I was in Marja with 3-6 in 2011, and Charlie 1-6 was attached to us along with Alpha. I think it was Alpha 1-9 was also attached. We had because we had such a large area. Our weapons company had their own AO. They didn't. Yeah, so they had their own AO, and we also had these 2 companies attached to us from different battalions. Charlie 1-6 was one of those. And I think Charlie 1-6 was with us, and then they sent Alpha and Bravo 1-6 up to Kajaki and up to Sangin.
Yeah.
And within 2 weeks of arriving in country, because they hadn't even moved their command element up north yet. Within 2 weeks of arriving in country, they had guys. The first corpsman got killed. There were three casualties within a 2 week period. I want to say it was like a week and a half. It was a really short period. And what had happened was we had a marksman, on the Taliban side who was taking single shots, and he was shooting right below the body armor that the Marines and the corpsmen were wearing. And unfortunately, you take a shot into the pelvis or into that hip area with all the arteries and stuff like that. Yeah. You can't really put a tourniquet on that area, because it's in that bad spot.
Especially because I think I think one of them was like, it basically like split his aorta in 2, which is like the largest blood vessel in your body.
All three of those that were killed from Charlie 1-6 were killed within a week and a half of each other, and I want to say all 3 of them were basically, they bled out on the LZ. Yeah, because that's such a traumatic place to be shot that you need to be in surgery like almost immediately to stop that. And they were well within the golden hour. The dust off birds were quick to get there. It was just one of those things where there's nothing you can really do about it. It's unfortunate, and that was a really rough way for those guys to begin their deployment. So
especially losing docs too.
Yeah, so. 2 corpsmen. I know for a while they were targeting corpsmen. Asking corpsmen to like. Some areas they would ask like a patrol would be out and they'd be like, "Oh, hey, I got an injured hand. Can one of you guys look at it?" That way they can identify the corpsman, and then after that was done, the patrol continued on. Then they would attack the corpsman. They would try to hit them with the IED or try to hit them because they knew that was a vital person within the unit. So, but go ahead. I just wanted to give a little bit more clarity because I was actually there. I was in the COC. I was running the fire section, and
when it happened,
we were doing the medevac stuff for that when that happened.
Yeah, so I I got off Limdu. Like I said, that was a fucking pain in the ass. And then like 1-6 when I was working at 6 Reg, 1-6, took the 2 Corpsman KA, and they asked the regiment first, if there were anyone within that what's it called, the regimental aid station, if anyone wanted to go
come out as a combat replacement.
Yeah. So what happened was I volunteered, and then they sent 2 people. So I went there with 3. So 3 corpsmen came with us. We got sent up, and then so we went as combat replacements as with 1/6, and then got into country. And so this entire time I thought I was going up to like Marja or down to Marja with 1/6 Charlie Company to be what's it called, one of the combat replacements for their corpsmen. We went to Leatherneck, got our gear, or not our gear, but like our combat load or whatever, and then got sent down to Camp Dwyer. When we got to Camp Dwyer,
real quick, how long after your was 2-8 back from their deployment yet?
Yeah, 2-8 had just gotten back.
So 2-8 had just gotten back. Did you see them when they came back?
I saw them when they came back, and I left so I think I came back like July, or I think end of August, something like that, and then I left in end of September.
Okay, and so as a combat replacement, did you have to do any kind of training before that, or
no? So I was still PTP, or was it TP?
Oh, PTP.
PTP, yeah. I was still PTP complete because I'd been to CAX like within a year.
Okay, so you got sent out as a combat replacement. You said you flew into Dwyer, and then
yeah. So I flew into Dwyer, and then what's it called? We flew into Dwyer, and then from there they were like, so basically, like, honestly, like being a combat replacement, and I think the highest ranking dude we were all like E3s, so we all got to Camp Dwyer, and it was like confusing as fuck because like we had no idea where the fuck to go. So we were just so when we got to the flight deck at Camp Dwyer, we were like, where's 1/6 Charlie Company, or like 1/6 like higher up, and we were like. So we basically waited on the flight deck for a little bit, and then like random trucks came to pick us up, and then they took us to like a holding area. It was basically like a hooch element or something. Like it was just basically a bunch of beds, and then one, I forget, I think it was like a sergeant or a staff sergeant from 1/6 was like, "Hey, you guys aren't staying here. You guys are going with Alpha Company." And at the time, Alpha Company had already gone into the Sangin Valley with like Bravo Company, and so they sent us up there with them as combat replacements, and then yeah.
Were you in the same area that you had been with 2-8?
I was further north.
Okay.
So we were when I was with 2-8, we were in the southern Sangin Valley. So it's like Nole. So like the PBs and the FOBs around it were like Fob Jackson, Fob Nole,
Fob Rob.
Yeah, Fob Rob was further south than Nole.
Yeah.
I've actually never been to Fob Rob, but they what's it called? You had like PB Amu, PB Almas. You had PB Jamar or Jamar.
I don't know. When I was there, it was all Afghan names.
Yeah, I think Jamal was the one that was like east. It was like east of Nole, and then what's it called? So we were in the southern Sangin Valley with 2-8 Echo Company, and then with 1/6 Alpha. What's it called? With the section I was with, we were Patrol Base Carolina, and we had like a weird op box. So we were north of PB Alcatraz, but we were in the upper Sangin Valley. So we were what's it called? South of Fob Washington, and then north of Fob Alcatraz. The closest patrol base to us was a Marsaw compound, so it was what's it called?
Pouze?
Yeah, PB Pouze was south of us, and then we at PB Canaan was an ODA detachment. It was either an ODA detachment or a JSOC detachment because I think they had a Navy medical officer with them. So I'm not sure how that that entails as far as like attachments or whatever, but they had a Navy medical officer with them, which I thought was weird. But so they had a ODA compound or some sort of like special operations compound in PB Canaan, and then they had Pouze south of us. So our op box was like fucking north to south was like maybe 5 miles, but like east to west was like 16, like up to the river, and I was just like, that's weird. So at any time we went north or south, we did what's it called? We would always obviously have to like reach out to Pouze or Canaan to let them know we were coming through their areas, which we honestly didn't really need to. I think it was Canaan where part of our mission towards the end was to like basically like do like we did a shit ton of census patrolling after like the main fighting or whatever up in the upper Sangin Valley. We did a shit ton of census patrolling, which is basically like bats in hiding, a shit ton of people, and then just numbers.
At this time, were there more? I know before a lot of the compounds have been abandoned by the civilians and stuff, especially when the Brits were there and when 3-5 or 2-7 and 3-5 were there, because there was such an immense amount of fighting. Since it was still a shitty area, but it had quieted down some, was there more civilians moving back into the area?
So forget the name of the village we were, what's it called? We were close to, or we were not close to, we were like literally like embedded in this village. Like there wasn't like we literally had neighbors. So our patrol base was pretty cool, but it was like a squad. It was literally like a squad plus PB for us.
Okay.
And then so at PB Carolina, we push out like local security patrols twice a day. Shit ton of census patrols. Honestly, the village was pretty quiet. It was like the dudes liked us there. Parts of it were sketchy, but I think that's just fucking Afghanistan. That's just the Sangin Valley. But for the most part, like they were, I mean, the big thing is that there were always like kids around. Kids were always really friendly with us, which was always like one of those things where like it's pretty good to have the kids friendly with you.
Anytime you see
kids disappear.
Kids, I mean, that's one thing I think I'll always remember from our deployment is being at like Shamshadu or one of the other patrol bases, or being out and seeing like the kites go up, and then seeing like it looked like the village was emptying. It was like women, children, and goats and stuff.
Yeah.
And they would just start leaving the area, and then you're like, oh shit, here we go. Like I would start trying to request air, and everyone was like, start looking.
Especially because what's it called? You could see, because the women would wear hijabs, so you just see like not a crowd, but you'd see like 2 or 3 women like wearing hijabs, like walking away from the village, and they'd have kids behind them, and it'd be like 2 or 3, and then 3 or 4, and then you'd be like, where the fuck are these guys going? So it was pretty insane. But
how would you compare? I mean, you said you were only in country the first time about 3 weeks before you were injured, but how would you compare, your little bit of time that you had there with the second time that you were in the Sangin, Valley? Did it seem more active or less active, or do you think you didn't have enough information?
I don't think I can't look at like my first deployment and be like because
it's just so short.
Yeah, it was so short, and then it was like the fact that like obviously like it got blown up in like a month, or we got blown up in a month. So like the second deployment was obviously I was there the whole time. And I got to see like the full gamut of like what a squad PB could do, and like what those assets meant. Got to do like some of the things that they didn't get to do, like which is like census patrolling, or like kind of I trying to like figure out like the right way to articulate this, where it's like that like I got to see like the missions an infantry platoon or like a infantry squad could do outside of like fucking like buddy rushing or clearing compounds, things like that, right? Like the mission profile for an infantry platoon could be so could run a whole gamut of things other than like fighting. So I think that was pretty cool to see, as far as obviously like after a while the fucking census patrols got to be fucking heinous. But
I mean, I think after a while, anything that you're doing over there, that's the complacency part.
Oh yeah,
that you get comfortable with what you're doing. It's like, oh, we're doing this again. I already know what's going to happen. Like, we're going to go out, we're going to meet a bunch of people. And they're going to say they don't know anything about anything, and then we're going to come back.
Yes,
But that's the time that's when the leadership has to, like, the small unit leadership, your squad leaders and platoon sergeants and stuff like that need to be like, hey, pay attention. So. Overall, what do you think how was your activity level in that second deployment? Was there a lot of like back and forth with the Taliban guys or the insurgency, or
initially yes, but once we got to the patrol base, our patrol base, there honestly it was pretty quiet. So that was like one of the things that I want to say we lucked out with in that deployment. We were squad PB of mostly combat replacements.
Okay. Was this a wintertime deployment or summer?
It was a wintertime deployment.
Okay, so that probably helped on the...
That helped a shit ton, because looking back on it, on that patrol base, it was, I think, myself, Wilder, Hannah, and Burkhart were the only ones with combat experience.
Okay.
And then the rest were just combat replacements and a smattering of them. So like dudes that came from like LAR, and they were all good dudes, but or most of them were good dudes, but like guys that came from LAR, and then like a decent amount of people from like a mortar section, but with no mortars. So that was like one of like there was a bunch of like weird stuff that I didn't understand like why they even had that patrol base out there, or like what that mission was. Just because once we got out there, I was like, honestly, like if we took contact, we'd be in a pretty bad position.
Yeah. How long do you think it would, from where you're at, how long would it take for do you think it would take for the battalion to send a QRF force to you if you guys were like being seriously attacked?
Dude, honestly, like if we took an attack, we'd have to request a QRF from Kanan, like PB Kanan, or like the MSOT detachment at Pouze.
Yeah. I mean, I remember we went up to Pouze and stuff like that, and that is a long drive.
It is a long drive
from Fob Jackson, where Fob Jackson is, I don't know if it was when you were there, but when we went the third time, or when we went on our deployment together, Fob Jackson was where the battalion headquarters was initially. Then they moved them over across the river to
I forget the name of that.
Yeah, I don't remember either. The one on top of the hill. But so at the time, was Fob Jackson still the battalion headquarters
for 1-6?
Yeah.
No. So
or for whoever owned that AO.
Battalion headquarters for the Upper Sangin Valley was at Washington. So 1-6 higher was at Washington.
Oh, okay. Who was at Jackson then?
Probably, I forget what unit was further south of us.
So this was earlier in the whole Sangin thing. So this was back when we were still in a pretty decent fight there. So the area the AO wasn't as large for each unit, right? No. So that way they could cover different parts of it. And when we went, it was one wide. Battalion
covered the entire area.
One battalion, yeah, they were up on that hill. I don't remember what it was called.
I think so, with an S or something. It's not Shergazi. No,
not Shergazi.
That's somewhere else.
Shukvani. That's what it was. So they were up at Shukvani, and I remember then. RAO as advisors was massive.
It was huge, especially because so that was one of the things I was pretty surprised with. It was the fact that RAO encompassed most of the Sangin Valley.
All of it.
Actually, it was the entire Sangin Valley.
I remember. So to bring it back around real quick. So your 1-6 deployment ended. From there, what happened?
So my 1-6 deployment ended. Got back to my unit, or got back to 2-8, and then I opted to stay with 2-8. So usually, what happens with corpsmen is that the Navy wants you to, especially if you want to stay in, like the Navy wants you to diversify. So blue side orders or green side orders are usually it's called sea duty. So sea duty is like either you are attached to a ship or a unit that can get moved to like on a deployment or whatever.
Big Navy, you're just a big Navy unit.
Yeah, exactly. And then so for me, like my sea duty was green side, so I was up for orders. What I did instead of picking orders to like a blue side command, which would be like a clinic or like a naval hospital, I opted to extend my sea service to match my EAS, which would be like 5 years at 2-8 or 5 years at fucking division. So I opted to do that so I could potentially push out with 2-8 on their 2013 deployment. So what happened there was 2-8 was slated to deploy like later that year. So what's it called? I got back to 2-8 February of 2012, and then 2-8 was slated to deploy at some point in 2012, but they kept pushing it back. So it was like 2-8 was going to deploy like fucking like August of 2012, and then they were like, no, that's not happening anymore. Now it's October 2012, and then so it kept pushing back, and I was like, I'm honestly like, if there are orders coming up, like I'll go on another combat deployment. So I talked to my chief, and so the funny thing about my chief at the time, so Chief Davis ended up becoming my chief, but the first time I met him, he was my instructor at Field Medical Training Battalion, so he still remembered me. And 2-8 was his company when he went to Iraq with 2-8. So it was like weird where he was like, usually you don't see chiefs who stay greenside their entire time, right? He picked up chief in like fucking 6 or 7 years.
Wow, really?
Yeah. He picked up chief in 6 or 7 years, and he stayed greenside the entire time. Right. The only time he's left,
like the unicorn,
dude. He is literally the unicorn. He's a Submariner IDC now.
Oh no way!
Yeah, but he's a big dude, man. He's a bigger individual, and I can't imagine him at
hot racking on the sub,
dude.
Some 6 foot. Yeah,
he's a big dude, but big stocky dude. But so like So he came to 2A. So he was like a 2A dude. So I think he kind of like understood like, or not understood, but he kind of kept tabs on the guys who, his students who came to him and then ended up going to 2A. So he knew me pretty well coming in. He ended up being like our first class first, and then what's it called? And then ended up becoming like our battalion chief. And then so I went up to him and I was like, hey, like if there are any orders coming up for either combat replacements or anyone going to Afghanistan specifically.
You were just itching to get back there,
dude. I mean, that's the thing is like I had that option. I think so. If there were, I think if there are other like Marines or like other dudes like listening to this, like I think it's safe to say that most people in a position where they're in a combat arms, if they could stay deployed, they probably would.
Yeah, I mean it's just a simpler life, man.
Well, yeah,
and
then
you
outside
don't deal
of,
with the garrison bullshit.
Well, that's the big thing is like dealing with garrison bullshit, dude. And I didn't want to do that, and I was like, honestly, like I would rather be in Afghanistan, like actually doing my job, and then like having like adverse like living conditions every now and then, but I would still be more productive.
All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and pause here and pick up for episode 2 of the Former Action Guys podcast. I appreciate you guys checking it out. If you listed all the way through, that's awesome. This is kind of how it's going to be. I split this podcast episode up because it was my first one I did, and it was a pretty long one. But generally, you'll see in the future, almost all of them are one long episode. That way, you can hear the entire story that person has or that they tell at that time. And then there's a couple that are split up at the time of this recording. Like I said, I've already recorded up to 29 when I'm re-recording the intro and outro for this video because honestly, it sounded pretty shitty before. So there's a couple that are split up, and I think one of them was almost 5 hours long. So I wanted to make sure people did listen to almost all the content on that one. So I wanted to split it up because some people are going to fall off before the end of it, and that's natural. It is what it is. But yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you. Make sure to check out my website, J Cramer Graphics. My Instagram is J Cramer Graphics, but my backup is Former Action Guys. So I know that's kind of weird at the time of this. Maybe I'll flip it at some point. We'll see. But that's just how it was when I started. So check me out on those 2 pages, and feel free to hit me up on email at formeractionguyspodcast@gmail.com. And send me a message through any of that social media. Take it easy.